Thank you for joining us on this Valentine's morning for the last of our three candidate forums in advance of the endorsing caucus in San Francisco on February 20th to the 22nd. Please note the disclaimer on the screen. This is an independent project of regional directors and is not an official CADEM project. The forum is live streaming now to delegates up and down the state. I'm Pat Johnstone from Region 2. Hosting together today will be Jeff Curson, Region 3, and Desmond Prescott, Region 12. They'll be handling things kind of on the back end that makes all this work. We have Desmond Prescott, who will be running the timer. More about that in a little bit, about how that will work for you. And Tariq Azim and of Region 16 and Christine Salazar will be asking the questions. Corey Allen will do the important transition part. After each question, after each person answers, he will let you know your time is up and who the next candidate to speak is. This is one of the most important jobs that we do as delegates, doing endorsements, and we as regional directors, really wanted our delegate all to be as informed as possible before they make this decision next week. So again, thank you all for taking the time out to join us. Thank you, candidates, for coming on and join us. And with that, let's get started. Today's forum is for candidates for governor. We will be starting with a 2-minute open from each candidate. You'll note there will be a timer that you will see for 2 minutes at the top right of your screen. When the time is done, there'll be some music that plays. We'll let you finish your sentence and then we'll mute you and go on to the next candidate. So first we will be starting with Tom Steyer for 2 minutes.
Good morning, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next week in San Francisco. I'm running for governor because Californians can't afford to live in California anymore. That starts with housing, it goes to electricity, it goes to healthcare. I'm sure we're going to discuss a lot of that today. For those of you who don't know me, I come from a family that is dedicated to service. My mom was a school teacher in public schools and then in prison. My dad was a Navy vet. A lot of you may know my wife, Kat Taylor, who's been an advocate for 40 years in California. I started a business. I ran it for 27 years. I walked away from it 14 years ago because it no longer satisfied me and dealt with my values. Kat and I took a pledge to give away the bulk of our money while we're alive, which we've been doing. And I've spent the last 14 years as an advocate and as an activist on economic justice and environmental sustainability. What does that look like? Well, partly what it looks like is taking on special interests. I've gone to the ballot box 3 times to take on corporate special interests, taking advantage of the system and working Californians. And 3 times I've beat the oil companies, the tobacco companies, out-of-state companies who weren't paying their state taxes fairly. And each time we delivered billions of dollars to California for education and healthcare without charging Californians a penny. I am going to do that again. Part of my campaign is to talk about how we're going to solve revenue shortage in the short run. And I'm saying I will go back to the ballot box and get split roll. That's worth $10 to $15 billion a year for healthcare and education that we need. And I'll close another corporate tax loophole called Water's Edge. It's actually being discussed in the legislature right now. That's worth $5 billion. But basically, I want to represent working families. I have no conflicts. The school employees have endorsed me. The nurses have endorsed me. I am just here for working families against corporate special interests.
Thank you very much. And just because you all have so many beautiful titles, we will all be addressing you by first and last name. So please, no offense to anybody with incredible titles for the work that you've done. And next up is Antonio Villaraigosa for your 2-minute opening.
Well, my name's Antonio, so I'm fine with that. And welcome to my home. Mi casa es tu casa. Let me just say to all of you, thank you for the opportunity to come and speak before you. As some of you know, I, third generation American and Mexican descent, my grandpa came here with a shirt on his back and a dream. My mom's struggled to make ends meet, raise 4 kids on her own, and put them all through college. I tell people this is a state that's given me more than I could have ever imagined. but it's also a state with big challenges. And the biggest challenge is the challenge of affordability. We have the highest gas price in the United States of America. We have the second highest utility costs, the second highest home prices. People can't afford to live here right now. According to National Association of Realtors, it used to be that the average age of a person buying a home was 28 years old. Now it's 40. Our kids can't afford a house, and so they're living in an apartment with 3 other roommates. And so what I've said to people is the next governor's going to have to take on this issue. But right now, we're also going to have to take on Donald Trump at the same time. I've never seen anyone in my life engage in these kinds of military deportations with assault weapons covered from head to toe like the Ku Klux Klan. The next governor's got to take that on, got to stand for the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. And I have a plan to do that. Executive directives on my first day as governor, but also promoting legislation that will put a damper on much of what's happening with these ICE raids. Let's be clear. I'm a former union member, a union leader for 15 years, civil rights leader before that, former president of the ACLU, speaker of the California State Assembly, and mayor of LA, a city larger than San Jose, Oakland, San Diego, and the like. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can't see. Where's the number where
It
it
should be in
says?
the upper right corner for you on your screen. That'll be where your timer is. And next up for their opening is Betty Yee.
I don't see it.
Thank you. Good morning, Democrats, and good morning, delegates. It's really a pleasure to join all of you, and thank you for the opportunity. Look, I just want to say we're all focused on the affordability issues here in California, but we can't fix the affordability crisis without a governor who can fix the state budget. And the ongoing budget problems that we're having are hurting investments in our schools and our healthcare, housing, childcare, seniors, and our environment. And I'm the only candidate who's served as a state budget director, as a member of the State Board of Equalization, also state controller. So I've ruled against corporations and the wealthy, making sure they pay their fair share of taxes. I've uncovered over $7 billion in misspending in the state of California, and I've never had to borrow to pay the bills for the state of California. And I've protected the retirement funds for our school employees. This is what hardworking Californians expect from their leaders and an experienced leader who works for them. Every day, I think all of us who've been traveling the state are just seeing families having to make tough choices about what bills to pay and what to go without. And I see this as I help families navigate choices about elder care and child care needs. And so we can't allow families to fall further behind, nor can we saddle the next generation with just debt where it will curtail their ability to succeed and thrive. But the biggest identity that I have is that I'm a proud daughter of immigrants, and we have to continue to uplift our immigrant communities here in California, give them the economic power and the economic resistance that they need right now to fight back. And so I'd be honored to have your support. I've been one of you. I've been a delegate most of my adult life, and just would be honored to have your support as someone who understands what everyday working Californians are experiencing.
Thank you very much. And Katie Porter, you'll go next.
Good morning, delegates. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you to my fellow candidates for being part of this process. Look, we are in a moment that requires our next governor to not just defend California relentlessly from Donald Trump, but also be willing to see, to name, and to fight to solve our longstanding challenges. Challenges about the cost of housing, the failure to invest in childcare for families, the ability to stand up to big corporations and make our healthcare system more affordable. My entire career has been about helping families struggling with affordability find a way through that, and then in Congress, working to address those challenges, with or without a whiteboard, holding big CEOs to account, whether big pharma, big oil, making sure that I was always fighting for the people of California. We need that kind of leadership in this moment. The status quo is not going to change. The fundamental unaffordability crisis that has been building in California now for decades. I am an expert in housing. I got my background in California Public Service, working to run the statewide foreclosure eviction and prevention program. And that is the biggest piece of most families' budgets. We can't nibble around the edges on affordability. We have to tackle the big piece, and that is housing. So that is my number one issue in this campaign. And I have a depth of experience and policy knowledge that will let me hit the ground running. So this is not just a talking point for me. This is something that I have a detailed plan about and I'm excited about. I think it's really important that we have a governor in this moment when our democracy is under attack who is willing to improve our democracy. California has some of the highest contribution limits in the nation, and we're the only states in the country that allows corporations to directly contribute. I have never taken corporate donations or corporate PAC donations, and I never will, including in this race.
Thank you so much. Next up is Tony Thurmond for your 2-minute introduction.
Good morning, delegates. Good morning, everyone. As you know, I've spent the last 18 years serving you as a council member, school board member, state assembly member, and twice as state superintendent. In the role of state superintendent, I'm proud of what we provided. Free preschool for every 4-year-old, free meals for every hungry student, $4 billion for mental health, and $6 billion to have broadband across the state and close the digital divide. As governor, I'll continue to fight back against Trump in the same ways that I already have with the bill that I wrote and passed that keeps ICE out of our schools and the bills that I helped to pass to keep ICE out of our hospitals. As governor, I will work with Congress to abolish ICE and to pass a pathway to citizenship. And you have probably heard I'm working on legislation now that charges a 50% tax on any business that operates an ICE detention center in California. As governor, I'm going to help us build 2 million housing units and to pass a tax credit for working people in our state to have more money to pay for gas and groceries and housing. I'm going to do that by putting a tax on billionaires so that we make billionaires pay their fair share so we have more revenue for our state. And I'll pass a single payer healthcare program and we will provide services for those who are homeless. You know, when I talk about immigration, I'm thinking about my own family. My grandparents were immigrants who came here from Colombia and Jamaica, and my mom from Panama. I grew up in a household where we didn't have food. I lost both my parents by the time I was 6 years old, and I was raised by a cousin who I didn't know until I showed up on her doorstep, raised on free lunches and food stamps and government cheese. Californians are struggling, and we have to help them. A better California is possible, and I know that we can build it together. And for those of you who are voting delegates, I'd be honored to have your support again as we do the work on behalf of Californians. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And next up will be Ian Calderon.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for allowing me to be here with you guys today. I'm running for governor just because I want to know that our families and our kids have a future in this state. A lot of you know me from my past in the time in the legislature. I was the first of my generation ever elected to the state legislature and the youngest majority leader in the history of the state. And for me, my biggest concern is that we've told entire generations of Californians that California might not be a place for them. We need a pathway to home ownership. The fact that people are paying 50, 60, 70% of their monthly income on rent is just not acceptable. It's not sustainable. We want to know that our kids have a future here. We want to know that we can stay here and we can raise our families here. I'm running for governor because people shouldn't be paying more for 2 kids to go and get childcare while you go and work than what you pay in rent. And I have this experience. I have 4 kids. My kids are 8, 6, 5, and 4. And when I had all 4 of my kids in childcare, we were paying more in childcare than we were in rent. And I'm running for governor because I want an accountable state. We will not have affordability until we have accountability. And people need to know that they can trust us with their money and that we are going to be transparent and focused on giving the results as the money was intended to deliver. But I want you to really all think about the moment that we're in right now. When was the last time that we went into a convention like this? When was the last time we had a forum like this, and the gravity of this moment and the position that every single one of you are in? You all have an important decision to make. You get to determine what the future of this state is going to look like, what the future of democratic politics, not just in this state, but across this country, is going to look like. We are a national leader, and you all get to make a really important decision to determine what that future looks like, not just for California, but for Democrats across this country.
Thank you very much, Ian. And next up is Javier Becerra.
Good morning, Democrats, and happy Valentine's Day to all of you. I hope today will be a good day. And can I just give you a fist bump right now for everything you did for November 2025 to give us that victory in Prop 50 and lead up to November of 2026 when we'll continue to win. So thank you all for what you do to help inspire the Democratic Party here in California. I'm Javier Becerra. I am the son of immigrants. I grew up in the home that my father built, a man with a sixth grade education who was a construction worker. My mother was a clerical worker once she came to this country from Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. I'm the first in my family to have an opportunity to graduate from a university. And what I can tell you is right now, we need a leader who can govern through crises, whether it's the man-made crises coming from Washington, D.C., or the cost of living crisis we're facing here at home. I've faced those crises. I've been through those crises. I have won through those crises. As your attorney general, during the same 4-year period that Donald Trump was president the first time, I defended the Affordable Care Act all the way to the Supreme Court against Donald Trump, and I beat him. I defended DACA, our program for dreamers, all the way to the Supreme Court against Donald Trump, and I beat him. I took Donald Trump to court over and over. We made sure he could not defeat California. He could not take away our values and our resources over and over. In fact, over 120 times. And in almost all of those cases, we came out winners. And as your Secretary of Health and Human Services, I protected millions of Americans, millions of Californians from the COVID pandemic. I negotiated for the first time in history the lower prescription drug prices for the Medicare program, saving in some cases up to 80% off of those list prices. And I balanced a budget that is 5 times larger than the budget of the state of California. 4 times in a row, I balanced that budget. As your governor, I will fight to protect you and all those hardworking but low-paid Americans. It's time to get a governor who governs through crisis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank all of you. Next, we're going to head into our question segment. We're going to give Jeff a moment to get you all spotlighted simultaneously on the screen. I'll let you know, because there's quite a few of you answering. After the question is asked, it will also be placed in chat. So if you need to refer back to it, you can look for it in chat. We are not adding in extra time for rebuttal because this will already go for a little bit of time, but you certainly are able to, in your answer time, to respond to anything that you feel requires a rebuttal. The answers will be 2 minutes long. You will have, you'll see the timer again at the top. And Jeff, if you give me the nod that we're ready, we can hand it off to Christine. One, two, three, four, five, six. I think we're waiting for a couple
No
minutes.
name.
Turn your camera on because we're going to be putting everybody on screen and I can't add you. There we go. One moment. Oops. Sorry. I have to do this over again. One moment, folks. Sorry. I wish that there was a quick way to do this.
There's a quick way to take you all off the screen. Getting you up on the screen takes a little bit longer.
All right. All 7 are on screen. We're ready to go. Thank you, Pat.
Excellent. So I'm handing it off to Christine. 2-minute responses, everybody. Thank you.
Good morning, candidates. Thank you again so much for joining us. First question is, affordability, such as in housing, healthcare, childcare, and utilities, is a top concern for many Californians. What is one concrete action you would take in your first year to measurably reduce costs for working families? And how would you hold your administration accountable to actually see results? We'll start off with Antonio Villarosa.
Thank you, Christine. The one thing, if I was focusing on just one thing, we'll have to focus on a lot more, would be housing. And by the way, let me speak to I lived we rented most of my life. My mother struggled to make ends meet, and yet I bought a home at 25 years old working at a nonprofit. Back then you could do that. Now our kids can't do that without their parents' help. And their option is 3 roommates in a crowded apartment. So what do we need to do? We need to cut red tape. We need to address the fact that we have zoning issues. CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, which is broken. You can sue from Arizona for a project in Boyle Heights, and that's unacceptable. We got to build again. I have a record doing that. When I was mayor of Los Angeles, I built more homeless housing than the 12 years before me, 3 times more, as a matter of fact. Built more housing than the 12 years before me overall as well. We went from 20,000 units of housing in downtown to 60,000 in the middle of a recession. So when I say this, I'm not just talking, I've got the record of doing that. We need first-time buyer assistance. We need to support the initiative on the ballot, a $25 billion initiative to help home buyers, first-time home buyers, get into housing. We need to have dashboards on everything like I did. If there's a reason why I was able to do as much as I did when I was mayor of Los Angeles, it's because we had dashboards, which means metrics, people, and they should be transparent and for the public.
Thank you very much. Betty Yee, you'll be next.
Great. Thank you. When you talk about the first year, I think there's a lot that when we talk about how to deal with affordability that we can do for Californians, but what we can get accomplished immediately in the first year, I want to reduce electricity bills. This is something that's within our power to do. I want to be sure that our CPUC is taking advantage of its full audit authority to look at the rate increases that have been given to our investor-owned utilities. Going back 3 years, I even would declare a rate moratorium for that work to happen because we have not gotten the accountability associated with those rate increases in terms of what that money was spent on, whether the rates actually exceeded what the utilities needed, in which case our ratepayers deserve a refund. So that's first and foremost. But I agree. Look, all these issues are going to require just parallel tracks in terms of how we're going to make progress. With respect to housing, how do we get housing online more quickly so that people can get into affordable housing much more quickly? We have to stabilize rents so that those who are rent burdened are not going to end up being unhoused. And so I would say utility rates first, and then also being sure that people can stay in their homes so that they're not having to think about just looking for higher cost housing or becoming unhoused.
Thank you very much. Katie Porter, you'll be next.
California needs to take bold action on affordability because this is not just a problem that families are facing. It's also a narrative and a feeling. It's affecting our ability to grow businesses here, to keep our college graduates here, to recruit new workers. So my first proposal would be to end income tax on families earning under $100,000. I have done the math on this. This is actually a budget neutral proposal. We spend so much time putting families through the ringer, collecting money from them, and then giving it back to them through a series of complicated programs that they have to navigate. We simply need to recognize that a living wage in California is a minimum for most couples, most families of $100,000. We shouldn't be adding to the affordability challenges for people who earn less than that. I also have a proposal to deal with making life more affordable by creating free assistance from crib to college, free childcare for infants and toddlers and young kids, and free tuition at our public universities. Some people have said to me, well, free public tuition, how could we do that? California made that promise already to Californians in the master plan, and we have a generation of Californians who remember what that opportunity meant. It is time to get back there. If we cannot support our next generation from crib to college, then we are not going to be growing as a state and ultimately growing our revenue base and able to grow our economy. Those are my proposals. They're simple to understand and they are easy to deliver. They're within the governor's power, and I am ready to get going on day one. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Tony Thurmond, you'll be next.
As I said, I would provide Californians, working class and middle class Californians, with a tax credit on day one. so that everyone has more money in your pocket every month to pay for the rising costs of gas, groceries, and housing. Everybody always says that they're going to lower the cost, and I don't know how anyone's going to do that, and that certainly will take time. And so people need help in a way that is concrete and specific. And I believe that tax credit for those who are middle class and working class will do that. I'm already working on a plan to build 2 million housing units by the year 2030. We have surplus property in every one of our 58 counties that we can build on that school districts own. And the legislation that I have now would provide startup costs and technical assistance to show school districts how to do that. I'm also supporting legislation that would provide us with a $10 billion bond, which I would use to immediately provide subsidized housing for the 10,000 homeless minors, young people under the age of 18, who, if we don't help right now, they will become homeless adults. And many of you know I have legislation that would make college free. It would create a way for a young person to go to college for free. And when they graduate, they pay back a little bit at a time. That creates a pool of money to help the next group of folks who come after them to also be able to go to college for free. The issue is that California's college students are paying, and families are paying more in debt than we've ever seen. At the same time that we have more college students who are homeless and food insecure. And so this proposal would create a way to make getting a college education a reality. I would also work to restore universal health care for undocumented immigrants. I was pleased to pass that as a legislator and to bring that back as governor.
Thank you so much. Ian Calderon, you'll be up next.
Yeah, thank you. As I said in my opening, we've told entire generations of Californians that home ownership isn't for them, and that's wrong, that they're going to be a renter for the rest of their lives. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by continuing the work that I did when I was in the legislature. 10 years ago, I introduced legislation that would have stopped corporate and foreign investors, specifically corporate investors, Wall Street investors, from coming in and buying up our homes in our neighborhoods. Corporate and foreign investors in this state own 1 in 5 homes, almost 1.5 million homes. 20% of all the homes are owned by a corporate or foreign speculative interest, and they're pricing us out of our communities. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to charge them a large upfront fee for them to be able to buy our homes. And if they own homes already, I'm going to charge them an annual fee that will generate $15 billion annually that I will then turn around and put into a refundable tax credit so that renters can actually save for a down payment to buy a house. I'm going to extend first-time home buyers incentives so that it's easier for them to get in a home. If you're a homeowner, right now you have a property tax exemption. That property tax exemption is $7,000. Well, it's been $7,000 since 1978. If that had kept up with inflation, it would be $70,000. So we're going to increase it to $70,000. And, childcare. Childcare is too expensive. If I'm a parent, I need to go to work and I'm paying $1,500 a month in childcare for my kids to have a place to go while I'm at school. That's significantly impactful to me as a parent, to me as my family. And so I have a plan to cap childcare costs at $500 a month for 95% of all the kids 0 through 5 throughout the entire state of California. And we can pay for it. My budget is going to be a statement of my values, and my budget is going to go towards funding programs to make it more affordable for Californians to leave. And we're going to have accountability measures that's going to repurpose dollars and forensically audit every single state spending program and tax credit so that we make the money work for us.
That's time. Javier Becerra, please.
Well, there are certainly many things we have to tackle. Let me give you a quick sense on this energy crisis that we face. The first thing I would do in my first 100 days is I would make sure we freeze the rates that you're charged by your utility company, and we would freeze the premiums that you're charged by your home insurance companies, because the rates and the premiums are out of control. In fact, as we saw in the Palisades and in the Altadena fires, people who had been paying their premiums for years to their insurance company are still waiting to find out what and how much they're going to get. That is wrong. That's why within my first 100 days, we will freeze those rates and those premiums, because we want to make sure we look underneath the pricing to make sure what we're paying is fair. And until we can see that we're paying a fair price, we should not have to have those prices and those charges increase. But on housing, which is the main issue of affordability that we face, here's what I will tell you we will do. One, we will make sure we stabilize rents because renters should not be gouged. We have to make sure we have statewide policies that make sure that we don't have outliers who are gouging our renters. Two, those same renters, the only thing stopping them from being homeowners is a down payment. Otherwise, they're paying monthly, essentially what a mortgage payment would be every 30 days. Why not help them get into the house, not as renters, but as homeowners? That means down payment assistance programs, which I will expand because you deserve, if you've been a diligent payer of your rent, you deserve to be an actual homeowner. Secondly, as we build more, we're going to build smart. We're going to build around transit hubs. We're going to build more ADUs. We're going to do the things that let us get housing into the hands of those who need it as quickly as possible. We're going to also make sure that if you're a Californian who works hard, I'm going to make sure that if you have a roof over your head while I'm governor, you never lose that roof, because no one should become homeless because it costs us way more money to pull you out of the streets than it ever does to keep you housed.
Thank you. And for the last person for this question, Tom Steyer.
So we're in an affordability crisis, and it goes to so many of the areas that my fellow candidates have been talking about. And in every one of those areas, I want to have a short-term solution to ease the immediate problem and a long-term solution to try and solve the underlying issue. So for instance, in terms of housing, I'm for rent control in the short run. Long-term, we need to build more houses, and that's a whole program. In terms of electricity, I'm for, as Betty Yee said, I'm for a completely different way of PUC oversight, but I'm also for introducing competition to the electric monopolies that are gouging us. But I want to talk for a second about what I think is driving so much of the affordability crisis for our families, for our institutions, and for our government, and that's healthcare. Because healthcare is growing at 6 to 8% a year. We can see it eating our budget. We can see it eating our families' budgets, and it's not going to stop. So in the short run, we have a real affordability crisis here. And that's why I'm talking about bringing $15 to $20 billion a year in new revenue to basically try and solve that short-term budget deficit that's so critical. And that's hitting every one of our programs. It's hitting schools, it's hitting childcare, it's hitting home care, it's hitting virtually every program. But long-term, that's a short-term fix. We know that long-term, the healthcare inflation that is eating us is going to keep eating us. And that's why I'm for single payer, but single payer takes a long time. If you study it, we can't snap our fingers. If everybody in California wanted single payers, we still can't snap our fingers and get it done. It's at least a 3-year thing. We need to start on day one, but we need to get it done over 3 years. And we're going to need someone in the White House to cooperate with us. But that's the only long-term solution. I am completely convinced that's the only way to deal really with the biggest crisis we have in affordability.
Thank you. That's fine. And Tarek will ask our next question.
All right, good morning, and thank you everyone for joining us today. California leads on climate action, but the costs and benefits are unevenly distributed. What is one climate policy that you would prioritize that both accelerates emission reductions and delivers tangible economic benefits to frontline and working class communities?
We'll start this question with Betty Yee.
Thank you so much for the question. So let me just say, with respect to climate, I think every Californian is feeling the economic hit from climate impacts. Food prices, our healthcare demands, certainly our water availability, insurance costs, utility costs cover wildfire liabilities. So we have to double down on how we're going to cut climate pollution and deal with the worst impacts. But the way to do that smartly is this. And I think especially now, I'm very motivated with all the rollbacks from the Trump administration to be sure that we are positioning California to be the industrial leader in climate technology. These are jobs that we can be bringing into our frontline communities. This is also a way that we can look at hopefully being recognized worldwide that technology is still, and innovation is still alive and well here in California. And so I just see this as something that we can still do even with the challenges that we are faced by the policies in Washington.
Wonderful. Thank you. Next up is Katie Porter. And just a reminder to all the candidates, the question is in the chat if you need to see it again.
I have been a climate champion since running for Congress and served on the House Natural Resources Committee, and this needs to be at the very top of our next governor's priority issue. As Trump is moving us backward and ruling and making decisions, for example, that climate change, we can't even measure it, we can't fight emissions, California must lead boldly on this. So for me, I think, one, you can't solve a problem very easily if the problem is getting bigger. That's why we can't back away from our emissions goals. We have to continue to reduce the amount of carbon in the atmosphere, the amount of emissions that we're making. We have to keep making progress on that because we've made the investments, we've spent the money, and we are starting to see the real benefits of that. Second issue on climate is environmental justice. As we move toward greener and cleaner energy, we cannot repeat the mistakes that we made, the big oil and fossil fuel companies have made, which is polluting brown and black and low-income communities and walking away without cleaning up their messes. This is an issue I called them out on in Congress. I passed laws to raise the rate that polluters have to pay when they want to use our public lands, and raise the bonding requirements. So when they do energy work, they have to put up a bond big enough to clean up their messes. I'm a mom. Picking up after yourself is really, really a key value in my household. It would be a key value for me going forward. The next governor, we're going to hit our 30 by 30 goal to protect 30% of water and air. But does that mean we have protected 30% of water and air and provided opportunities for every Californian? We have beautiful national parks, for example. We have beautiful state parks. We also have dozens and dozens of communities around this state that do not have any shade canopy, that do not have any green space at all, and 700,000 California homes without clean drinking water. To get there, we need to invest in clean energy deployment and do it in a way that's sensitive to who's going to bear the costs.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Next, perfect timing too. Next up will be Tony Thurman.
As you all know, I spent the last 25 years living and representing Richmond, a city that sends the highest number of people to the hospital with asthma in the county of Contra Costa because it's surrounded by heavy industry. It's a historically African-American city that is now has a high population of Latino families and low-income families. And so racial and environmental justice is more than a slogan for me. I've had to be there when there have been explosions in the community that sent 2,000 people to the hospital. And as a council member, I was the deciding vote to prevent Chevron from processing the dirty, heavy crude that would have the biggest impacts on our environment and on the communities that are there. I've passed legislation to close idle oil wells and to assess the biggest penalties on those companies that pollute. I got to thank Ian Calderon for voting on it because the legislature passed that during my time in the legislature. I will continue to hold these enforcement principles against those companies that pollute and to use that revenue to help our low-income communities. We have to build infrastructure to even accommodate some of our climate goals. We have to build 2 million charging stations to get to where we want to be on some of our energy goals. And so we should be giving vouchers to families who want to buy an electric vehicle, who cannot afford it. We should be working with our building trades that want to build those charging stations, that want to build our infrastructure, that give us the ability to address sea level rise. And by building our infrastructure, we're also creating job opportunities, good paying jobs for many of the people in those same communities who are impacted by climate issues, and to invest in small business. I think that we can invest in companies that will focus on alternative energy and help us expedite our transition into clean tech.
Thank you very much. Next up will be Ian Calderon.
Yeah, during my tenure in the legislature, I would say that it was probably the most progressive legislature with the most progressive legislative agenda, probably in the history of the state of California. And when you take a look at all the environmental policies that we passed and all of the goals that we set for ourselves, set for our state, they were significant. I mean, the goal to get to 100% renewable energy by 2045 that was passed during my tenure while I was in the legislature. And so my focus is going to be on following through on those goals and those commitments that we've made, because it's going to be important that the governor is focused on seeing that through, and not changing course in the middle, that ends up creating complications in terms of the perception of environmental policy and economic justice. And when you take a look at so much of the challenges that we're facing around affordability and the achievement of environmental justice, there really are a lot of concerns within our communities of color, our Black and brown communities, that we want a clean environment too. We want clean air to breathe. But the responsibilities of paying for that often falls on our shoulders and falls on us to have to pay for, with our rates increasing and our costs continually going up. And so if we're going to be a leader on environmental justice, we also have to be a leader on economic justice to make sure that no community is being left out and being pushed out because we're making this transition into a better, cleaner way of doing things. And we need to have all options on the table. I feel like, at the state level during my tenure in the legislature, there were options to get to a clean energy future and clean infrastructure that were just arbitrarily taken off the table. And I think that that's wrong. We need to have all options on the table. We need to have abundance of energy that we're generating from clean resources and clean sources to power us and to keep costs down and to make sure we have reliability so that when we flip that switch, the light comes on. But investment in infrastructure and making sure that we are following through on the commitments that we already made is going to be significantly important. And that's how we continue to be a leader nationally.
Thank you. Javier Becerra, you are up next.
We need to prove to the people of California that we can govern through crisis. And that's why I said before, in my first 100 days, I will freeze utility rates, because the people of California deserve to know that we're going to get to the bottom of these things to make sure that they're not paying more than they should, and that they will be compensated when something happens. And they've been making their payments all the time. So freeze utility rates is the least that we can do to give Californians a sense that we're going to have their backs. Secondly, we need to expand our electric grid so we can accommodate the change towards cleaner burning, cleaner energy. So that way, when we start moving towards fully electric vehicles, really moving towards electricity to really cover our needs, we've got the grid that will be able to sustain it. That, of course, means building up battery storage. And I think at this stage, we need to jump in for clean energy production where Donald Trump has abandoned it. Solar and wind, the subsidies that we're going to be made available, we're letting those two industries really flourish. Trump has yanked the money away. We're going to step up and make sure that that continues forward. As AG, I was the one that defended the clean car standards all the way to court, and I beat Donald Trump. That's why they're still in place. As AG, I protected the Clean Air Act against Donald Trump. That's why we're able to continue to fight for the Clean Air Act today. As AG, I was the one who fought against the gratuitous releases of methane gas by the oil industry when they didn't want to have to spend the money to try to protect our air and our environment from the releases of very deadly, very dangerous methane gas. But here's what I also want to do. I want to expand what I did as AG and HHS Secretary. I established the Environmental Justice Bureau at the Department of Justice. I established the Office of Climate Change and Health Equity in the Department of Health and Human Services, because I know that the first and worst hit by climate change are our hardest working and our poorest Californians. That's where I will be focused.
Thank you that time. Tom Steyer, you're up next.
So I just want to try and paint the framework of where I think we are in climate change and in terms of responding to it. I mean, I think the important things to know are this is going to take place in the marketplace. I wrote a book called Cheaper, Faster, Better: How We Win the Climate War. I think whatever we do, we have to take into account that in an affordability crisis, we have to be delivering cheaper, faster, better solutions to the people of California. That's the number one rule. The number two rule is, there are two factors. There's structural racism in this state around environmental justice, around pollution in poor Black and brown communities. And that's just a fact, and it keeps going. I went down to Ventura County in 2015 to make sure they didn't build another fossil fuel plant in Puente. And I worked with the community. It had already been approved by the PUC. It was on the books, and we got it taken off because it was ridiculous. That is continuing going on. The life expectancy in different parts of Fresno is 20 years different within 2 miles. And last week I was down in Southern California in Sun Valley. They moved the jet airport from Santa Monica to Van Nuys to a place where no one's ever been on a private jet. and that's where the pollution goes. So the second point is structural racism and environmentalism. And the last is we're in an electric revolution. So what is it? What are the solutions under those circumstances? Those are the three facts. One, polluter pays. Absolutely. That's the number one rule. You pollute, you pay. That's how we curb pollution, and we charge a lot. Number two, redirect the money to the frontline communities that are being structurally prejudiced against. Absolutely critical. But the third thing is, Betty's right. We need to use the new technology. The fact is, they want to build a new electric grid. There's new technology. We don't have to build the electric grid. It's 35 to 42% efficient. We can take it at least up to 60 without spending $10 billion and putting it in the rate base. Let's be smart about this.
Thank you. Next up is Antonio Villaraigosa.
Thank you, Tariq, for that question. 6 years ago, my good friend Tom Steyer said to me when I was running in the last race that the difference between me and my opponent was the difference between a man and a boy on the environment. I had 100% record in the legislature when I was in the legislature. I'm the author of the Carl Moyer Act, which was the biggest effort to clean up the air until AB 32 and SB 32. When I was mayor, I said that we'd make LA the cleanest, greenest big city in America. We took down carbon emissions, greenhouse gases by 28%. Number one American city, number 5 in the world. We took LA off of coal. Very few cities in the country can say that. We made the port, which is the biggest emitter of greenhouse gases in California. We made it the greenest port in the world. I reduced our water consumption to 1990 levels. I'm 70 levels when we had 1 million less people. I was focused on climate change. But the next government, so all of us support these great policies, but I actually have a record on them, of actually doing them. So what do we need to do going forward? We need an all of the above strategy on energy. It's not just going to be renewables and solar. When they're peak load powers, not base load powers. We've got to double down on the innovation to make sure we have battery power to do that. We need a policy that understands small nuclear is the future. If we're going to get to net zero by 2045, there's no way we can do it just with renewables. We've got to understand that the next governor's got to be a doer. Yes, we all agree that, climate change is the biggest challenge, but someone with a record is what we need, because that's what the governor's going to have to do, is actually implement these policies.
Thank you very much.
And Christine will bring us the next question.
Thank you so much. Next question is, Democrats often pass strong policy, but like many public servants, we often struggle with implementation. What is one large, complex initiative you have led that required managing people, budgets, and institutions? And how does that experience prepare you to govern California effectively? And we'll start with Katie Porter.
Thank you for the question. I am passionate about this, about closing the gap between what laws say on the paper and what really happens in people's lives. This is the heart of the work that I did in Congress on the Oversight Committee. It's why I drive a minivan with a license plate that spells out oversight. I would use here the example of creating a widely nationally recognized foreclosure prevention and eviction program, and one that was designed to hold the biggest banks in this country's feet to the fire for the damage and the harms that they caused during the foreclosure crisis. This would not have been possible without our then Attorney General, Vice President Kamala Harris, choosing me and funding this program and having my back. She had the wisdom to understand that it is easy to pass something or to say something, and it is very hard to do something. She also wanted me to work directly with families so that they could call our office. We took in thousands and thousands of phone calls from Californians and helped a lot of them either save their homes, slow down that process, find alternate financing for their housing. I won national awards for this program. It was a startup. We had the first day my position was announced, we got 80 phone calls in the first hour. Me. That was it. That's who had to return those first 80 phone calls. But within a couple of weeks, I had hired a tremendous and amazing, talented, and diverse staff that spoke 5 different languages. We did outreach across the state on our military bases, in every community in California that we could get to, helping to educate people. So I am really proud of what we accomplished. I am proud to have received multiple awards for innovation, and for the effectiveness of the program, including being invited to speak at the National Association of Attorney Generals, to talk about what this program did. And it was a model for a lot of what other states did. So that is a program I have designed, delivered, and it was one that shows that we need not only to hold people to account, but to innovate in how we're doing it to center the real voices of Californians.
So much. Next up for this question is Tony Thurman.
You're right. It's a big state, and implementation is always the key issue. When I wrote the bill to keep ICE out of our schools, I knew we would have to do training for 2,000 school districts to understand what it means that you don't have to admit ICE unless they have a judicial warrant. And we've done that. That's 2,000 school districts that serve 10,000 schools and nearly 6 million students. Try implementing across a state during a pandemic. Under my leadership, we served over 800 million meals to hungry families in a time when everyone was scrambling for resources. I passed the legislation to say that we will have universal meals for every hungry student without a bunch of paperwork requirements. And we are continuing to implement that all across the state. We have fully implemented universal transitional kindergarten for every 4-year-old in our state. That means in every district now, we have some portion or version of transitional kindergarten. And by the way, this year, I'm sponsoring legislation to make kindergarten a requirement in our state. So we go the next step in working to make sure that all of our children learn to read by 3rd grade. Also, during the pandemic, I led and helped secure $6 billion to have broadband all across our state. It's heartbreaking to know that on day 1 of the pandemic, 1 million kids were without a computer or without access to the high-speed internet. Now they have it, and we're helping to close the digital divide all across our state. As governor, I'll take this further. When you look at the places like construction, people are being cheated out of their wages. Employers are misclassifying their employees. Other employers are forcing their employees to use public assistance because their wages are so low. I will step up enforcement on all these cheaters, and so that we use the fees to have more revenue to deliver more services across the state.
Thank you so much. Ian Calderon, you're up next.
Well, I mean, I am a dad of 4 kids, so I don't know what is a more difficult job to manage other than 4 little kids and trying to wrangle them to do what they're supposed to do and follow through on their chores and be respectful of the house. But I've also been the majority leader. I've done that job. I've done the job, parent. I've done the job of being a legislative leader and a majority leader of the state of California younger than anybody else in the history of the state. Major policy negotiations, budget negotiations, making sure that we, pass a budget that is balanced and that the biggest piece comes with managing the body, managing the members, and making sure that everybody supports the priorities and the policies of the legislature and of the party that we're pushing forward. And my tenure as majority leader and our leadership in the legislature at that time have 100% success rate of being able to follow through and getting that job done. But I think one of the biggest issues that we're going to have moving forward is restoring people's trust in government and restoring people's faith in our ability to do our jobs, and that they are the focus of what it is that we're doing, that they're the focus of that work. So many times we focus on passing that bill or making that budget allocation, and we do our press release, we do our social media posts, and we take our victory lap, but then there's no follow through. And then when you take a look at why there was no follow through, it's because the state 9 times out of 10 is getting in its own way of being able to actually follow through and deliver on those results. We have to rebuild trust in government. I'm a Democrat because I believe that government is the best way to create a level playing field where everybody has the same equal opportunity to get things done. And our next governor needs to be focused on delivering that and restoring people's faith and in their trust in us, in our ability to do our job, and that we truly care about them and what it is like to live in their shoes every single day. And I believe that that's something that I will be able to deliver on day 1.
Thank you so much. Next up, Javier Becerra.
So let me just first start by saying, when you have to govern in crisis with some of the biggest public enterprises in the world, you have to get things done. The Department of Health and Human Services, I mentioned, the budget, no one in this race for governor has balanced a budget as large as the state of California, except me. And as I mentioned, the budget at HHS was bigger than the budget of the state of California. Actually, it was bigger than the budget of the state of California and the budget of the Department of Defense combined. And 4 years in a row, I had to balance it. I had to balance it during the 100-year pandemic that we faced that was killing thousands of Americans every day and killed over 1 million of us. I was able to get 700 million COVID vaccines into the arms of Americans during our 4-year tenure. And the best thing about that, we never charged anyone a single penny to be able to get that vaccination. We did it through crisis, but we implemented. I also helped start and launch 988, the Suicide and Mental Health Prevention Lifeline, that today is working really well. It's the alternative to 911, and it is there for people who need it. I established the fact that you can actually negotiate lower drug prices for the first time. Everyone said government can't do it. We proved you could actually make it happen and save Americans a ton of money by negotiating lower drug prices. As Attorney General, what bigger crisis was there than Donald Trump? Donald Trump became a president when I became AG. I fought him back, as I mentioned, on the Affordable Care Act all the way to the Supreme Court. DACA, I beat him on the Supreme Court. I mentioned how we protected clean car standards. We took on family planning Title X funding, and we protected that for reproductive health. I made sure that I went after those who were not abiding by the law, whether it was ICE trying to raid California, or whether it was the LA County Sheriff's Department or the Kern County Sheriff's Department, which I investigated for their pattern and practice of discrimination. We could get this done. You just have to know how to deliver.
Thank you. Next up is Tom Steyer.
So you described getting something done with people, budgets, and institutions. And I want to add vision. And I want to give an example of something where we change the direction of how people talk about clean air, clean water, climate change. We did it in 2010 when we took on the oil companies. And I was the co-chair of that, and I started as the chair. And no one had ever beaten the oil companies in California. In fact, Jerry Brown personally told me, never take on the oil companies, you will inevitably lose. That's why I was the chair, because no one else wanted the job. So the first thing I did was I recruited George Schultz to be my co-chair, because I knew that we had to come across as even-handed. This couldn't be environmentalism against people's money. This had to be a question of something. How does it help people of California? All we talked about was jobs and clean air. We got every union on our side. We got half the chambers of commerce on our side. We went out, and actually it was very much an environmental justice campaign where our best message was about clean air, and it was delivered by about a 55-year-old woman who was the head of the American Lung Association in California. We re-envisioned exactly how to position this in a way environmentalists had never beaten oil companies ever. And so we had a different message. We had to raise a ton of money. We had to go and deal with all the different newspapers in the state and change them so that they saw it as we're the practical people. In fact, at the same time, the Congress of the United States was absolutely getting smeared on the exact same issue. And by the time it was over, the two oil companies who we were fighting, one of my friends had lunch with him, and the guy said, I had no idea Tom Steyer was so mean. We absolutely whipped them. We got almost 70% of the vote, not only by organizing, by visioning it differently.
Thank you. Next up on this will be Antonio Villaraigosa.
Christine, thank you for that question. I wish I could only tell you I have a policy that I promoted and then implemented. I have many. I'll give you 4. Crime. When I became mayor of Los Angeles, the second largest city in the country, LA was the most violent big city in the United States of America. I was the former president of the ACLU. I took on 3 strikes, you're out, and I said we could make LA safer. So LA went nearly 48% drop in violent crime, safest city since the 1950s. and along with New York, the safest city in the United States of America. We did it with constitutional policing. We took guns off the streets. We dramatically expanded after school programs and summer youth jobs. Education. When I became mayor, 1 out of 3 schools were failing. By the time I left, it was 1 out of 10. We increased the graduation rate by 60% because I understood that if LA was going to be a great city, it needed to be anchored by a great school district. Infrastructure. Gavin Newsom, as you know, I ran against him, made me infrastructure czar. When he did, he said the one thing he could never say in the last campaign was that he built more infrastructure than me or drew down more federal money. I actually drew down more federal money than almost every state in the United States during that period. Built 3 light rail lines, 1 busway, rebuilt schools in LA, rebuilt more schools than anyone in the country, the airport, the port. I put 270,000 people to work in living wage jobs. And finally, climate change. I mentioned earlier, in addition to what I mentioned earlier, 400,000 trees, more than anyone in the United States. I was focused on implementing, not just passing laws, not just voting for them, but actually getting it done in the second largest city, a city most like the state of California.
Thank you very much. And next up will be Betty Yee.
Great. Thank you so much. Christine, you asked the question that I think is really critical, and that is, how do we deliver ultimately for Californians to improve their lives? And, I'll just say this, as a student of governing, we think about implementation when we're actually writing the bills, not afterwards. And so you bring all the parties together, you figure out how you're going to deliver this, you figure out what you've got to work with now, what has to be enhanced, where the funding comes from, where some of the unintended consequences may be. And so I'll just give you a couple of examples. One, I was one of the architects of the state earned income tax credit in 2015. This was to hopefully get more working families to claim the federal credit. We were leaving so much money on the table that we thought if we had a state credit, we could actually put more money in working families' pockets and also be sure that they knew about the federal credit. To date, so we established that with the Franchise Tax Board. I've chaired that board. We brought all of the stakeholders in to help us think about how we could do the outreach for this program. And so to date, since 2015, we have actually put about $7.5 billion in working families' pockets. And this was also the model for how we did the Young Child Tax Credit, the Foster Youth Tax Credit, but also say when you do implementation right, then you're able to actually grow those programs and have it be more beneficial for Californians. The second example I want to give is I shut down the last state oil platform in the Santa Barbara Channel. This was something that had never been done before, but we had an oil company that was not producing, that was losing revenue, that kept coming in for a bailout, and we said enough at the State Lands Commission. And so what I did was we brought the legal team together. It was tough. We've never done this before, but we just took every step to make sure that California was on solid footing. We went through lawsuits, but we recovered everything that that the company was throwing at us. But also say, it's about implementation, getting the people that know how to deliver. And I'm just going to give a shout out to our state workers because you got a lot of expertise there. They will be the champions of whatever policies we want to have delivered for Californians.
Thank you so much.
Eric will now ask the next question.
Many of California's biggest challenges, housing, homelessness, transportation, are implemented locally. How would you use the governor's office to align state goals with local action, and what would you do when progress stalls? And we'll start with Tony Thurman with this question.
As a council member, we built thousands of units of affordable housing, but we had redevelopment back then. I think we're going to have to bring some version of redevelopment back so that the state is providing resources and support to our cities. Think about it. We're not getting any help from housing and urban development and from this administration. And until we flip who is in the White House, we're going to have to create an infrastructure to support our cities. We can't just pass mandates to cities and counties and say, build and build and build, and then not give them the resources to do that. That's why I'm developing this plan that allows for the ability to build 2 million housing units of affordable housing for our workforce. The surplus property that's on school district, that's just on school district land. Think about all the other public agencies that also have surplus land. School districts like Los Angeles and San Francisco and others have already begun building, but they need help. And that's why I have legislation that gives them some dollars for startup costs and some technical assistance. And then we can move beyond housing only education staff, but also helping nurses and firefighters and city and county workers. Again, I mentioned that I'm supporting legislation that would put on the ballot a bond measure for $10 billion to build affordable housing. Sadly, our state just has not kept pace with supply, and that contributes to the demand challenge and the increases in costs that we are seeing. And so this $10 billion will help us, especially when you consider that 40% of those who are unhoused are older Californians. That's where we have to start as a priority. And then, as I mentioned, we have 240,000 homeless youth and 10,000 unaccompanied minors. I'm working on programs to house those. And then we can be programs for others who are homeless, who struggle with mental health and substance abuse, and we'll build that.
Thank you very much. Next up is Ian Calderon.
Yeah, that's going to start with accountability. We need to be able to work with our locals, but we need to make sure that we're holding ourselves accountable first. We need to know that there is going to be a forensic audit of every state spending program in the state, every tax credit in the state, so we know where our money is and where it's going, and that we're holding ourselves accountable to make sure that the programs that we're funding to take care of, our housing crisis, to help solve and move the needle on our homelessness crisis, that the money we're investing is actually delivering on its intended result. And if we're not, admit that, own that, pivot, and change. Build on what isn't build on what is working, and move forward and away from what isn't working. And then there needs to be regional considerations. I've traveled up and down the state, and one common theme that I've heard time and time again is that, Ian, you guys, or in Sacramento, they pass one size fits all policies, and what works in San Francisco is supposed to work in Central Valley. And the reality is that it doesn't. I've talked to mayors throughout the Central Valley, and they say, Ian, we can build housing here. We can build affordable housing. We can build a brand new home for a family to come in and buy for $400,000. But we also don't have any jobs in order to support that development, to support those homes and own those homes. Why don't you guys invest more in our communities? Invest in actually incentivizing industry and businesses to relocate here so that we can support ourselves and we can have the jobs that will support development and growth. I mean, we're a very coastally concentrated state. I think California's future and the success of California's future is going to be spreading out and taking advantage of investing in more communities, but working hand in hand with our local leaders to make sure that we understand the impacts of the policies that we're going to pass in Sacramento, and that we're holding ourselves accountable to the results. We have to rebuild that trust in government, and we have to be results oriented and results driven. So many local governments feel like Sacramento just does what they want to do for their own political clout and their own political attention and aspirations. That cannot be the case. The next governor needs to be focusing on actual collaborative governing, working together.
And next up will be Javier Becerra.
So here, it's pretty simple from what I can tell you, because as secretary of the largest public enterprise, health enterprise in the world, whether it was trying to take care of COVID or trying to launch 988, as I mentioned before, you needed to coordinate with the 50 states. Whether it was as AG, where I needed to coordinate with local governments when it came time to take on violators of the law, you need to coordinate. And what I can tell you is this: too often, stakeholders are left out of the room. They're not at the table. And the result is they then take action in court. And a project that we launch doesn't move. Take example, high-speed rail. Why is high-speed rail costing so much? Because people were not included at the very beginning when the plan was drafted. And when we said, let's go leave the huddle and launch on this game plan, we left out a lot of communities that said, wait a minute, you didn't include us. And so they sued. And time is money, and all those delays have added up. So here's what we do. You incorporate everyone. You get everyone at the table. You lock them up. You make sure that we don't leave until we have one game plan. And everybody had a chance to put their piece in. They may not like it all, but they were part of the consensus that helped build it. You incorporate views. Secondly, and this is the more important part, once you have your plan, you launch. You cannot have the state of California stop, because there are still disgruntled individuals. No, that's why they had a chance to sit at the table. California must have statewide policy, whether it's housing, whether it's energy. We need to have statewide policy. Two, we make sure that as we launch, we are clear we are all interdependent. We cannot do this alone. Local and state must work together. When I did COVID, people forget the federal government doesn't run healthcare. I had to ask 50 states for their support to make sure we had a nationwide strategy. Same with 988. When I went after South Toledo, Marin County Unified School District, because they were engaging in segregation, it was the first desegregation case in 50 years. We worked together to solve it.
That's time. And next up will be Tom Steyer.
So I agree with everybody saying that one size doesn't fit up all in California. This is a huge, diverse state, and anyone who's gone around it or attempted to work in it knows that people have very different interests. And at the same time, we obviously need to get things moving a lot more, and we need to work with the locals. So how is that going to work? What are the issues? Well, I completely agree with Javier. If you want me in on the landing, ask me in on the takeoff before you get going. And that's why I care so much about vision. Have people agree with what we're trying to get to. That's number one. Number two is money. A lot of the issues with local counties and cities are they don't have the money to implement what the state wants them to implement. That's why I'm pushing so hard for split roll, because split roll goes to localities to solve their education shortfalls and their healthcare shortfalls. So a lot of what they're pushing back on has to do with the fact is they don't have the money to implement what the state is asking them to do. And then the third part of this goes to urgency. And that is because it's such a complicated regulatory environment that we're in that people get at loggerheads. And I'll give you a perfect example of this. I was down looking at low-income housing project down in Los Angeles last week. They built the whole project. They'd gotten the permits. They'd gotten the zoning. They'd actually built it. And the local utility wouldn't hook them up for 3 to 4 months. That is 3 to 4 months where you have a completely built building with everything in it, but you can't get any rent because no one can live there because there's no electricity. That's a job for the governor. That can't happen. The coordination part of this is actually critical. So for me, this is a question about being upfront and getting a vision together, delivering the money so people can implement it, and then actually bringing the urgency to getting it done. That's the governor's job.
Thank you so much. Antonio Villaraigosa, you're next.
Well, thank you. And I actually agree with a lot of my colleagues on this issue. I'm the only candidate that was both Speaker of the California State Assembly and the Chief Executive of the largest city in California, the second largest in the country. And what I can tell you, like Jerry Brown once said, who voted for this when I was mayor? And found out, I knew the answer. I had voted for it. Frankly, too many unfunded mandates come from the state. Too many, we push our responsibility. For instance, prisons, we send it with realignment. We send it to the counties to pay for it. Don't give them the money. We took away the CRA redevelopment in the middle of a recession. I led that effort to fight it. So I'll tell you something. Yes, we need to align our goals, but we also need to respect local government. The cities of California, I named 4 in the opening, they're the economic driver of this state. We can't continue to put unfunded mandates on them to force them to do things that really don't make sense for their cities. So like the other said, I'm going to work with them on that. I'm going to collaborate with them. I was the leader of the top 10 mayors. I understand what mayors want and local government wants, but I was also speaker and a chief executive, and I understand that we can and should align our goals, but they have to be done in a way that's respectful and that understands the fact that every city is different, every community, and particularly the rural areas, are all different. So I intend to collaborate with them, not just force things down their throat.
Thank you so much. Next up is Betty Yee.
Great, thank you so much. I agree with really most of what everyone has said. Look, I think we had a time in the past where the state-local relationship was much more robust and healthy. And I think Prop 13 changed all of that. When local governments have, frankly, a lot of authority, but no means by which to exercise that authority, it really creates a very, very tenuous, untenable situation. So we have to strengthen the state-local relationship, but we have to do it in a way where there are clear expectations about roles and responsibilities. And so I hope that when we look at what needs to be done, and I agree with Ian, not a one-size-fits-all. We should really understand why local governments aren't able to deliver. And a lot of it is because they don't have the fiscal capacity. And we can be a better partner at the state level. We could help incentivize business development. We can help with sharing and infrastructure costs. Just whatever the hurdles are, we should be able to help do that. But when I said setting expectations, there are going to be jurisdictions that don't intend to carry out any of what they're going to be responsible for, not building an ounce of affordable housing, and we have to have consequences for that. So I would just agree with all of you, but that state-local relationship has to be strengthened, and not just with cities, but with the counties as well, because when we talk about homelessness, it's the counties that are actually providing the services, the supportive services, that are trying to get people back into a stable situation. And so I want to look at all of those, because counties are strapped right now. They're probably the ones that are the most schizophrenic, with having three different sets of responsibilities in terms of how they serve their communities. But this is where I want to just be sure that we are giving the authority and all of the resources that they need. But the expectations have to be set clearly at the outset about roles and responsibilities.
Thank you very much. And next up is Katie Porter.
I'm going to try to shake up the status quo a little bit here and be a trendsetter and give a slightly shorter answer so that we can make sure we get to all 6 questions. So I would love everyone to do that. You've been to one California county, you've been to one California county, and I really have seen that here in Orange County. We are the 6th most populous county in the United States. San Diego is the 5th most populous county in the United States. Yet so much of our policy gets made around a certain idealized city, a certain vision of what California is. I was a 9-year 4-H'er. I showed pigs. I grew up in a rural area, and a better future for rural California is really important. So we have to think about that diversity of California as we design policies, and we have to make sure we're creating opportunities for those counties, most of which have Republican leadership right now, more on that, to come into conversation about this. So what do we need to do? With regard to housing, look, Rob Bonta used to call me, I felt like every week, saying, Katie, I want to give you a heads up notice. I'm going to sue Huntington Beach. And I would always tell Rob, go with God, right? They have brought it upon themselves. But we also have to think about we have to keep doing that, but we have to think about how to create incentives and rewards for the cities that want to do the work of housing. We have some that do not, and we have some that do. And it's important to hold people to account, but also to provide the resources, the funding, the energy, and the political focus on places that do want to tackle housing, that are being innovative on homelessness. Transit is really important to me. And here in Orange County, I think it's a great example. You have to have transit that looks differently in different places. So I am a big champion for the kind of transit that we have in our big cities, including the Bay Area and LA. That's why I have the support of the Amalgamated Transit Union and the Teamsters. I'm also a big supporter, though, of microtransit. I have a city in Orange County that has 23,000 people.
Thank you so much. That's time.
I am not a woman of my word. I apologize.
Right. Jefferson Region 3 here. I am a person of my word, and I had promised the campaigns that we try to get them out in just over an hour and a half. So we're going to skip question 5, and we're going to move to our last question, which happens to be one of them that we have received the most response on. California's top 2 primary system creates a real risk that when many candidates from one party run, the general election may not reflect the will of the party's voters. There has been valid criticism that there may be too many Democratic candidates in this race, and unless some drop out by the close of filing, there is a real chance, however small, that it could leave us with no options in the general election. How do you assess that risk in this race, and what responsibility, if any, do Democratic candidates have to ensure that voters have the chance to vote for a Democrat in the general election? Quick note, Desmond, please reset the clock to 1 minute for this answer. And so we will start with Javier Becerra.
Great question. And the first thing I'll tell you is it is good to have real competition. I am thrilled to see so many great Democrats who are running. That's what we need to see. We don't need to have campaigns where there's only one person running or someone we don't really care about running. Look at what happened in New York City. There was a candidate who was older and tired, and the younger person had the ideas. We want to have good competition. Second thing I would say is let the best candidate win. And let us get out there and do these types of forums so people have an opportunity to see who's out there. 3, come on, Californians, start paying attention because we need you to be able to make those decisions. But without a doubt, point 4, the most important one, Democrats, we have to unite. We have to work together because this election is too important and our state is too important. It will matter not just to California, but to the country who becomes the next governor. And so let's have that good competition. Let's have that healthy fight. But let's all at the end come together. I'm prepared to make sure that we come together as one California to fight for the best governor.
Thank you so much. Tom Steyer, you'll be up next.
So it is true that the implications of this race with 2 Republicans splitting 30 to 35% mean that if we have infinite number of Democrats, that the math works out that we could end up with the absolute wrong outcome. That's the first point. The second point is we also have a very well-funded conservative Democrat running who has the support of some very conservative people and big corporations that also makes this more difficult because we could end up with only a Republican and a very conservative Democrat. And that would be a choice that also for a progressive like me, and I think for everyone on this stage would be very, very painful. So I want to say you asked the question, what is the responsibility? I think the responsibility on us is for the people on this panel to talk to each other and to understand that we all have a responsibility, including specifically me, to make sure we don't end up where the math kills us in either of those ways.
Thank you. Antonio Villaraigosa, you're up next.
I'm with Javier. Competition is important in our party. We don't want somebody just anointing a candidate. Tom said it. About 32% of the vote, 25% of the voters are Republican, 32% are supporting the 2 candidates. I've been in a race like this before. Trump is going to endorse one of them. When he does, he will shoot that candidate up. Ever since we've had this open primary, the fact is we've always had a Democrat and always have a Republican. We will have a Democrat and a Republican again. And that's a good thing because at the end of the day, a Democrat's going to win in this state. So I don't buy that. It's just not real. It's not going to happen. And I do think competition matters. I'm with Javier.
Thank you very much. Betty Yee, you're next.
Great, thank you. So let me just be clear. This race is wide open. It's wide open. Voters are undecided. And at this point, frankly, up until this point, it's been an insider's game. It's been the pundits kind of calling and the elites and the donor class trying to set the field. And, if I had listened to the pundits, I would have never been elected state controller in 2014. I ran against the Speaker of the Assembly, outraced 2.5 times to 1. But you know what? This is something that I just have to say to all of you as delegates and as a Democratic Party, as a long-time delegate, we know how to fight this. We're not going to play victim to this. We know how to fight back against the Republicans. And frankly, among this field, I will tell you, I hope that people understand that this is a choice between whether we want to be run by the Billionaires Boys Club or whether we want to still give power to the people in terms of determining their leadership. And so I am with Javier. I think competition is good. This is the Democratic Party, for God's sake. I think we're all putting our best foot forward to make our case to be the best governor for California.
Thank you so much. Katie Porter, you're next.
I think this is a real concern. This race is different than some we've seen. I think that's a good thing, but I do think it means we can't rely on the past races to necessarily say this could not or will not happen. I think it is a real risk, and more people having joined the race is multiplying that risk. I am really proud to be the highest polling candidate who is here today seeking your support, and I have held that position throughout this race. One of the things that's different about me is how I raise my resources. I am at the near the top of the candidate pool on resources, but I have done it differently. I'm not relying on billionaire wealth. I am not relying on corporate special interests. I've done it through grassroots donations. I think that is incredibly important. The number of people who have chipped into my campaign, what they are chipping in makes a real difference. It gives me a real opportunity here to be connected to potential voters throughout this entire campaign. I agree with my colleagues. I think it's important that Democrats choose. Look, my campaign would be a historic win. We have never had a woman governor. It's been 30 years since we've had a woman even on the ticket on the Democratic side going into the general election.
Thank you. Next up is Tony Thurmond.
You know, it's terrifying that a Bianco could become our governor, and that's why I challenged him to a debate to expose, the damage that he would cause to our state. At the same time, we have to, as Democrats, find a balance between both viability questions and our values. And Democrats will have to put forward a candidate who does more than just advance party, but thinks about the issues that Californians are struggling with. Betty points it out. She and I both have been in very tough statewide elections and both won. $30 million got spent to get my campaign, and I, came in first in 2018 and top vote getter amongst all statewide officers in 2022 in my reelection. And we know that we have a path to victory because when voters hear our message, it propels us to the front. And so most Californians and most Democrats are undecided. Let's give them a reason to select, and we will provide them with the leadership that they need that goes beyond party, but also advances Democratic Party values.
Thank you so much. Next up is Ian Calderon.
Yeah, Katie, just to be clear, Chris Larson with XRP, he's a billionaire and he has contributed to your campaign. But I will say, I agree. We need competition. And what I think is happening is that we are 100% being let down by the top two primary system. I think that we need to reevaluate our top two primary system. I like the independents. I think it's important that we continue to carry on with the independents to show the right way of doing things. But I think we need to move closer to a ranked choice voting. We are being shut out from being able to have more options on the table for voters to have the ability to choose the candidate that they want. And because of money, because of resources, because of attention, because of a lack of incumbency, good candidates could get shut out from being able to be a part of the conversation and actually, end up preventing us from being able to make the right choice. And so I agree with Javier. I agree with our colleagues. I think competition is good, but I think that this just begs a bigger question in terms of what the future of our election should look like in California.
Thank you all. We're now going to move to the closing statements. You will each have 2 minutes to do it. Jeff, are you going to leave the screen up? Yes, okay. So we will start with Tom Steyer.
So when I look at where we are in California, what I can see is 45 years of working people getting screwed. And there was actually an article at the beginning of this week in, believe it or not, the Wall Street Journal that showed over the last 45 years, the amount of money in the United States going to corporations has doubled. And the amount of money going in, the percentage of money going to working people has gone down by 11 or 12%. There has been a systematic rigging of this system against working people to advantage big corporations, the people who run them, and the people who own them. And so when I look at what I'm bringing to the table, one thing is we have a shortage of money, and I'm talking specifically about revenue generating things to solve our short-term problem. But I'm also talking long-term about addressing the structural issues, things like bringing competition to our electric monopolies. That's what we have to do. Single payer, that's what we have to do. Rent control, that's what we have to do. So I'm also talking about the long-term issues. I am actually the first person, I think, on this panel to stand up to Trump because I started Need to Impeach and got 8 million signatures to oppose a criminal administration and a president who broke the law every single day. And I saw him as someone who was going to do what he's doing, which is he's going to attack us. And it was a question about mobilizing, foreseeing, and acting. And that's what I want to do as governor, is have a vision, deal with the short term, have long-term solutions. I don't have any conflicts. I don't owe anyone anything. I want to tax the rich people, the billionaires. I want to tax the big corporations so that we can actually balance our budget and deliver the services that Californians need and pay the people who are delivering those services. I am all in this struggle between representing working people against the oligarchs.
Thank you so much. Next up will be Antonio Villaraigosa, and then give us 1 second to spotlight you, and then you can begin whenever you're ready.
First of all, thank you all for getting on this Zoom, on Valentine's Day. I know you didn't wake up in the morning and say you wanted to do this, but I think it's important. Look, folks, I've said again and again, we need a proven problem solver. I was Speaker of the Assembly. I balanced two budgets with a surplus with a Republican and a Democratic mayor. I'm the author of the largest expansion of health care for kids, healthy families. Millions of kids got health care. The biggest effort to clean up the air, the Carl Moyer Act. I've mentioned, but I think it's important to mention again, crime went down nearly 50% with constitutional community policing. Graduation rates went up 60%. And #1 American city in reducing carbon emissions, #5 in the world, built more infrastructure than anyone. Look, the next governor has got to tackle big challenges, the challenge of affordability, the challenge of things not working in the way that we want to for working people, an economy that's not working for them. And I've got a record doing that. But I've also got a record as a civil rights leader. And I say that right now, when Trump is violating our Constitution, engaging in ICE raids that are terrorizing our communities and separating kids from their families, we need a leader who will pass laws, a leader who will sue the government, a leader who will use the bully pulpit, but a leader who spent his whole life building mass movement, a part of the civil rights movement. That's who I am. That's what we need right now. I'd be honored to have your support.
Thank you so much. Next up is Betty Yee, and then just give us, there you are. You are spotlighted whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Democrats, and thank you, delegates, for spending some time with us, and really appreciate my colleagues coming together as well. Look, I'm just going to say this. I started out by saying this. We can't fix the affordability crisis without a governor who can fix the state budget. We have been outspending our revenues for many years now. We have a growing wealth gap here in California, where we're leaving Black and brown people behind, families behind, and it's eating into the middle class now. And so we're going to have some tough choices to make. And yes, we're going to have to raise revenue, and we're going to have to think about how we deliver services more efficiently. But one thing we've not talked about is that we need to start investing in our people. When I think about the ICE raids, the first thing I think about is where's the power upon which our immigrant communities are standing to fight this back with economic resistance. We have to be sure that we're creating an economy where they can benefit from it, not be harmed by it. And I feel that way about most areas of California right now because the economy is not working for them. And so this election, frankly, to me, is really a symbolic election in terms of whether we are going to allow the billionaires and Trump to rule our democracy or whether we're going to allow the people to do it. And look, we're all in this fight against Trump. And there are many ways to fight against him. But I will tell you the way that I fought. I gave up lucrative job offers after I termed out as controller. I decided that I wanted to be out in the field. And I have been canvassing. I have been flipping congressional seats. We're going to have to do that in this midterm election. And I will continue to do it in my campaign for governor as well. But it's the fight in the trenches that matters. I've been with many of you in those fights, all up and down this state. But we're going to continue to fight in terms of how we're going to win back this democracy and economy for working people. And so I'm just really thrilled to be among colleagues that share those values. But this is going to be an unglamorous job for the next governor in large part. You can be in the headlines, you can be flashy, you can have gimmicks, but the work is unglamorous. And I'm ready to do that work. I've been an underdog all my life. I've always exceeded expectations. And I just want to be sure that we deliver that for all Californians to exceed expectations. Thanks so much.
So much. Next up is Katie Porter.
California has always been a beacon of hope for immigrants and families who've come here for our nation, which looks to us for leadership, for our values in these trying times. Our next governor has to defend those values and that hope and protect the California promise from the attacks that are being waged by Trump and by Washington. I have spent my career as a consumer protection advocate, taking on Wall Street banks who scammed and cheated our families. I passed laws that lowered healthcare costs and expanded healthcare coverage. And I voted again and again to protect our climate and to protect immigrants from attacks. I took on government officials who were asleep at the wheel or who, even worse, were driving us off a cliff. With Donald Trump in Washington, it is time for a governor who will be fierce and who will be tough, who will work to close California to ICE and to protect every single Californian. Look, we need a governor who understands what it's like to be a regular Californian, who pushes a shopping cart, who understands that kitchen table issues aren't talking points. They're what happens every night when she's done cooking. I am really excited to be in this race. I think it is an incredible opportunity for California, and I think the eyes of the nation are on us. It is time to shake up the status quo. It is time to elect a governor who is willing to speak truth to power, to go against the grain, and fight like hell for our families and communities. I am ready with your help and your partnership to be that governor. Thank you for what you all do, for the work, the engagement, the activism, the door knocking month after month. I have seen what's possible for us to elect Democrats in parts of California that were unthinkable just a few years with your partnership and with your help. And I want to be that political partner to you as well in making sure we elect not just our next Democratic governor, but Democrats in every part and pocket of California. That's only possible with your help. Thank you to my fellow candidates, and I look forward to seeing you all at convention.
Thank you so much. Tony Thurmond, you'll be up next.
I want to start by just saying thank you for this opportunity. And I guess next week we'll have to see if Democrats can come together and select the candidate to move forward under the Democratic Party banner. Look, this is a very difficult decision, right? Before you are several great public servants. And so it will be a difficult decision. At the end of the day, I think that, I would beseech you that we have to make decisions based on the candidate's experience, their vision, and their lived experience. And, I would just give as examples of my problem solving, even on this call. I'm sending text messages as we just finished, spending hours to end one strike in a school district. And now I'm looking to avert another strike that's impacting our higher education systems. And I'm trying to find ways to do it because that's what I do, is find solutions to problems. And that's what government has to do. I've tried to be really explicit about my vision. We have to build 2 million housing units and provide a tax credit to those who are struggling. And we have to tax billionaires because we need more revenue. We can't tax working people or middle-class people anymore. And I couldn't be more clear about that. We have to tax billionaires to get new revenue. And in doing so, I intend to also work with people like Senator Bernie Sanders and the Senate and Congress on this conversation about having a national wealth tax so that we can protect California from potentially losing billionaires after we tax them. The only experiences I can point to when I talk about lived experience is, mine has been a story of overcoming humble beginnings. I talked to you about losing my parents and growing up in a household on public assistance. Almost every job I had in my social work career was a low-paying job. I started out making minimum wage, $3.35 an hour. Struggling just like Californians, we can help them. A better California is possible. Thank you for today.
Thank you so much. Ian Calderon, you'll be next.
First, I want to thank the regional directors for organizing this, and I want to thank all the delegates for joining us today. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all your time and all of my colleagues' time. California, we're leaders, and we are in an unprecedented time. We're in an unprecedented time in this country. We're in an unprecedented time in this state, and we're in an unprecedented time in this race. But we need to lead by example. I have been a Democrat since I could recognize what that even meant. From the very beginning of my life in voting as a Democrat, ever since that I can vote. I'm a proud Democrat. I'm a proud Democrat because I understand the value of government and the role that government plays in being able to make a difference in people's lives. I know I'm a Democrat because of how important it is for those that are the voiceless to have a voice amongst all of the other challenges that they face in the state, that they have a voice in government advocating for them and supporting them. But the next governor and the trajectory of not just the state, but the party in California is going to be significant. I don't want to continue to be the state that everybody points to in other states and say, oh, we don't want to be like California. Oh, we don't want to do this. We don't want to do that. No, no, no. I want them looking at Democratic leadership in California and saying, see, that's why you elect Democrats. That's why we need a Democratic House, a Democratic Senate, and a Democratic presidency. It starts in states like California, not like, no, it starts in California. If we ever want to have immigration reform, we need to lead in California to convince everybody else and show them what real Democratic leadership actually looks like. And that's the moment that we're in now, and the decision and the choice that you have and the power that you have. We are seeing a generational shift in leadership that is happening across this country. Voters want something new. They want something different. Voters in California are not any different. They want something new. They want something different. They want to see the future, and they want to see themselves in that future. And every single one of you is in a unique position to be able to do that. And I appreciate your time and appreciate your support.
And to close us out, Javier Becerra, please.
So Democrats, thank you for being the lever that gets us to victory. Thank you for everything you've done and inspiring our Democratic Party. I have taken on reckless federal governments. And here, Tom, I have to add that while impeachment was even a twinkle in anyone's eye, I had already taken Donald Trump to court. Within his first few days of becoming president and my becoming attorney general, I went after him in court for his Muslim travel ban. And thereafter, I kept going and going over 120 times, taking him to court from trying to stop him from trying to change the character of our state, the people of our state. I have taken on ruthless corporations. I've defended workers' wages. I've defended women's health care. I've defended immigrants' rights. I've launched civil rights investigations. I launched the 988 Suicide Mental Health Lifeline. I launched the first ever successful government negotiations against the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world to drive down prices. I've taken down sex trafficking rings. I've taken down organized crime operations. I'm not the richest candidate in this race. I'm not the slickest candidate in this race. And the governor's office is not a place for on-the-job training or inflated promises. That office and that governor is where we need to have someone who knows how to fight, but not just says it, but knows how to fight and knows how to win. I intend to be that governor because of my experience as congressman, as attorney general, as secretary of Health and Human Services, to now apply all that experience to fight and win for you, to fight for that hardest working, lowest paid Californian, to fight for that young California family that's trying to struggle just to stay in our state, to fight and win for that family that's now on the verge of retirement, but doesn't know if they can stay in California in retirement. I want to fight and win for them. I want to fight for people like my parents. I hope I can get your vote because I want to be your next governor.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I thank the candidates not only today, but for our first two forums as well. It's pretty apparent we have an embarrassment of riches with all the wonderful public servants that are stepping forward in all of these races. I want to thank the delegates, those who watched us on the live stream today, but also our recordings are being viewed by hundreds and hundreds of delegates. So thank you for taking this really important role so seriously. I do have to give a special shout out to my brother and sister regional directors for taking on this task, not just the ones that were here helping today, but everybody behind the scenes that pitched in with the preparation, the really immense preparation of bringing everybody together to do this. So with that, I will say good morning. Enjoy the rest of your Valentine's Day. We look forward to seeing all of you in San Francisco at the convention from February 20th to the 22nd. And with that, we will be signing off unless any of the other regional directors want to say a word or two. But thank you all very, very much.
I just want to add that, of course, the voting will be Saturday night. So be looking for the email when you check in and you register. Make sure that the email address on your registration matches what you expect to be receiving, because that's where you're going to get your ballot. So check, make sure, because we want to make sure that every one of you have the opportunity to place your votes in this important election for endorsement. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
See you at convention. And the live stream is off. And thank you to all of our, I'm going to start